Right now, somewhere in your head, there's a memory of you at age 2. A birthday, a fall, a word you learned. You can't reach it. It's not gone, it's buried. And the reason it's buried might be the strangest thing your brain has ever done to you. Here's the number that should bother you. By the time you turn 7, you will have forgotten almost everything that happened to you before age 3. Not most of it. Almost all of it. Scientists call this infantile amnesia, and it doesn't happen because your brain was too small or too undeveloped or too busy learning to walk. It happens on purpose. Let's start with the part that doesn't make sense. Babies remember things. A 6-month-old can recognize their mother's face after a week apart. A 1-year-old can recall where a toy was hidden a day earlier. Infant brains are not blank. They are absorbing an almost impossible amount of information every second about faces, sounds, temperature, danger, comfort.
So the memories are forming. That's not in question. The question is where they go. In 2004, psychologist Patricia Bauer at Emory University ran a study that changed how scientists thought about this problem. She had parents record specific events involving their toddlers, a trip to the zoo, a fall down the stairs, a birthday party. Then, years later, she brought those same children back and asked them what they remembered. The results were brutal. Children who were under 3 at the time of the event remembered almost nothing. Not fuzzy details, nothing. But children who were 3.5 or older retained real fragments years later.
Something happens right around age 3. A switch flips. And before that switch flips, whatever gets recorded doesn't survive. For decades, the leading theory was simple. Babies don't have language yet, so they can't encode memories the way adults do. No words, no way to file the memory for later retrieval. It sounded reasonable. It was also wrong, or at least incomplete. Because in 2014, a researcher named Paul Franklin at the University of Toronto ran an experiment on mice that pointed somewhere else entirely. Mice, like human infants, show the same pattern. Young mice form memories, then lose access to them as they age past a certain developmental window. Franklin's team trained infant mice to fear a particular room by giving them a mild shock there. Days later, adult mice remembered the room and froze in fear. Infant mice did not. The memory should have been there. It wasn't accessible.
So, Franklin looked at what was different in the infant brain, and he found it: neurogenesis. The hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming new long-term memories, is doing something in early childhood that it will never do again at the same pace. It's manufacturing new neurons at an explosive rate, tens of thousands of new brain cells wiring themselves into existing circuits every single day. Here's the part that should unsettle you. Every time a new neuron gets wired into the hippocampus, it doesn't just add capacity, it disrupts what's already there. Think of your early memories like messages written on a chalkboard. Now imagine someone is constantly, violently erasing sections of that chalkboard to make room for new writing. That's neurogenesis in an infant brain. It's not filing memories away carefully, it's overwriting them to make space for the flood of new information a growing brain needs to process.
Franklin tested this directly. When his team increased neurogenesis in adult mice using either exercise or genetic manipulation, the adult mice started forgetting things the way infants do. When they slowed neurogenesis down in infant mice, the infant mice started remembering things they shouldn't have been able to. The conclusion was almost impossible to argue with. Your brain isn't failing to store your first 3 years of life. It is actively demolishing the storage to build something bigger. This is where it gets stranger, because there's a second piece to this puzzle, and it has nothing to do with neurons. It has to do with the self.
Psychologist Catherine Nelson, one of the pioneers of childhood memory research, proposed something called the cognitive self theory. Her argument: you cannot form a lasting autobiographical memory until you have a stable sense of I to attach it to. Autobiographical memory isn't just recording an event, it's recording an event as something that happened to you. A continuous person who exists across time. A toddler doesn't fully have that yet. Their sense of self is still assembling. Ask a 2-year-old about themselves yesterday, and the concept barely registers. There's no stable narrator to file the memory under. This is why children typically can't form lasting autobiographical memories until somewhere between 3 and 4, right around the same time they start passing the mirror test, the classic experiment where a child recognizes their own reflection as themselves rather than another child. Right around the same time, their language explodes, giving them a framework to narrate their own experience. Right around the same time, neurogenesis in the hippocampus starts to slow. 3 separate systems converging at almost the exact same age. So the honest answer to where your early memories went isn't one explanation.
It's two working together. Your brain was too busy rebuilding its own hardware to preserve the software. And even if it had preserved it, there was no stable you yet to own the memory. But here's the twist that most people never hear. The memories might not be entirely gone. In 2016, Franklin's team ran a follow-up. They used a technique called optogenetics to reactivate specific neurons in mice that had been tagged during an early memory. Neurons that, under normal recall, showed no trace of the memory anymore. When they artificially reactivated those exact neurons, the mice responded with the original fear behavior. The memory was still physically there. It just couldn't be reached through the normal machinery of recall. The engram, the physical trace of the memory, survived. The retrieval pathway didn't.
Which raises the question science still can't fully answer for humans. Is your third birthday party still in there somewhere? Sitting in a neural circuit your conscious mind has no key for? There's suggestive evidence that parts of it might be. Under hypnosis, in dreams, in moments of extreme emotional intensity, people sometimes report fragments that feel earlier than anything they can normally access. Scientists remain deeply skeptical of most of these reports. Memory is reconstructive and easily contaminated by suggestion, but the mouse data leaves the door open in a way that used to be considered impossible. Think about what this means for the people you can't remember being. The version of you that first felt fear. The version of you that first felt safe in someone's arms. The version of you that heard your name for the first time and didn't yet know it belonged to you.
That version isn't a stranger. It's the foundation everything else was built on top of. Every adult fear of abandonment, every instinct toward comfort, every unexplainable pull toward a smell or a song. Some of it may be an echo of a memory you can never consciously retrieve, but that never actually left. Your brain didn't erase your childhood because it didn't matter. It erased it because it mattered too much to leave in the way. It needed the space to build the person capable of remembering everything that came after. Somewhere underneath the part of you that can talk, that can narrate, that can tell you exactly what happened last Tuesday, there's a version of you with no words at all. Still there, still wired in, just permanently, silently out of reach.